All right. What I did forget to do is actually save my changes in the last video. So if you haven't saved your changes yourself, if you don't know how to save your changes, because we've already told it to save as a particular file name, now we're not creating a new file, so we can just actually click this save button up here to save my changes as I'm going, or I can actually just go to the file menu and select save to again save as I'm going. So the difference between the save as and the save is that when you're saving as, you're saving it as a new file. When you're using the save, you're saving this Excel spreadsheet as the current file by saving the updates that changes you've made. All right, let's talk about formats. Formats right now. Okay, so obviously this is a date, and that's an obvious one to format. So if you remember, we can actually format the cell to actually be a specific data type. So if I right click on it and I select format cells, so if you're wondering how come he's doing it a little bit differently to how we did it in the textbook or being instructed before, just remember that with Excel and with all Microsoft products, there's usually many ways of achieving the same thing or getting to the same bit of configuration. So what you tend to do is you tend to actually stick with the one that works for you. Okay, people can purely do all of this with their keyboard if they wanted to. But for me, the easiest way for me to get to this format cells dialog box is to actually right click and choose format cells. So for me, it's already set to date, and it actually, for me, it's actually set to the way I want it to, but maybe I want to change it. Okay, instead of doing it like that, I might want to change it so that it shows the month in writing rather than in actual numbers. Okay, you might notice that mine's gone all hash. Okay, so that's because again this doesn't fit the cell. So I can my choice is to actually expand that or change the format. So now that I've expanded it, how do I get back? You can use the undo arrow. So if you do something that you've decided that was wrong, you can just quickly use the undo arrow and undo it. Or if you change your mind again and said, oh really, that was right, I can use the redo arrow and reapply those changes. I can also use the Control Z. I know that I use that quite a lot. Many things I need to undo. So that seems not to fit properly. So maybe I'll change the format of the cells back to this format, which is just using all the numbers to display the date. And don't forget, like I mentioned during the course, that in America, they display their dates a little bit differently to Australia. So obviously, I'm assuming you're working in Australia and your Excel program has been configured with the location of Australia. All right, let's actually put some of these formulas in to actually get us our profits and totals. But before we do that, I just noticed that they're not formatted as money. Really, they're just sitting there as basic numbers, not necessarily money or currency. So now I know that these cells should be formatted as currency because they're going to display the information they're going to be displaying in them will be money or currency. So I'll right click again, selecting all the cells I want. I right click and I select format cells, and that's the way I prefer. And I'll choose currency. And obviously it's going to show 2 decimal places, and that's pretty standard in most cafes to have decimal places. And obviously, especially when we've got something that's actually $7.50, so we should definitely display the decimal places. If you're working with real estate, maybe showing decimal places it's not very appropriate for that kind of industry. So decide which kind of currency you want, and getting back to that, decide the decimal places you want to include. Okay, right now it's including 2, but if you're working with real estate, you may not want to include any. So I'll cancel that. So let's now put some formulas in. Okay, So right now, I want to actually work out the profit, and basically, sorry, what I've noticed is I've done something wrong. So the numbers sold is not really currency, is it? So I've actually made a mistake there. So I might go back here and change the format of that cell, and I'll change that to be just a number. Okay, and number, and in this case, I don't want any decimal places because you can't have 0.1 of a cake or something like that. So I'm going to make the decimal places 0, and then I'll change that just to a number format. Okay, so this will make a little bit more sense now. Okay, so obviously the numbers sold is not a amount of money, but with that we can work out the profit. So we all know that profit is basically the sales price, take away the cost price, and multiplied by how many of that particular item you sold. So let's actually do this. So to actually put a make a cell into a formula, we have to put the equal sign. Okay, so we said it was sale price minus cost price, okay, multiplied by the number sold. But if you remember from your BODMAS days, we need to actually, if we want to do something like that, we have to actually put brackets after in the expression. Okay, so what does that mean? That means because the multiplications in BODMAS usually occurs first, it wouldn't make sense if we actually put it in as sale price minus cost price times by numbers sold. That doesn't actually make sense because we'll get negative $7.50. Okay. Because it's not obeying the rules, it's obeying the rules of BODMAS. Okay, it does the multiplication first. So if we want it to actually do the subtraction first, we need to put brackets around this, and now we get a correct price. So if you do just a mental check, the cost price is $5, the sale price is $7.50. So basically, for every coffee, we're going to make $2.50 profit. $2.50 times by 3 coffees that we sold is a $7.50 profit. Okay, you notice that if you notice, as well as I do, that each of these are going to be the same formula, isn't it? It's just that the different cells are going to be used as basically the reference for the numbers. So what I can do is, because I've done it once and this is the formula, and I'm happy with this formula, I can actually fill the rest of this area to use the same formula. But the autofill will actually adjust it so that it's actually going to use the specific cells for that line rather than the previous line. So let me show you. So this is the cell that contains the formula. You notice that there's at the bottom right hand corner, there's a little dark box, a dark square. And if I put my actual cursor over it, it changes my cursor from a big plus, big white plus, to a small black plus. And now that means I can drag it down, and it will actually adjust it to all those settings. Okay, so if you want to have a look at the formula, you notice that my formula now is referring to D6 taking away C6 multiplying by E6. So you notice that that's specific for this line, isn't it? So it's adjusted my formula to reflect that it's on a different line, so you should be using those different cells as those different lines. Okay, so by doing that, I've actually able to, sorry, I'll Control Z that. I'll escape to get out of the formula view. To actually, so you can see that that's actually quickly given me the form, allowed me to put the formula on these sections. Okay, so the next thing is I want to actually work out what my total cost and my total sales, uh, my totals are. Okay, even though I've sold this much in coffee and this much in cakes and teas, I want to work out what my total profit is. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that I need to use a sum formula. Okay, so sum formula, I can actually just use I can type it in, to be honest. I can type it in as equals sum, open bracket, so saying I want to find the sum of these, and they'll give me they'll give me the sum. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. I'm just going to Control Z to go back. I can also do it this way by selecting this cell. I can click on the auto sum, and it'll automatically realize that these are the things that we're going to be using in our sum, and do the same thing for us. It's whatever you prefer. Okay, the auto sum uses the Excel's intelligence to work out to actually determine what you want to do a total of, and most times it gets it right. But if you actually prefer to stay in full control yourself, you could type out the formula manually yourself. All right, so at this point, I might just save my work because I don't want to lose it. I'll click the save button up here,